Barron Trump thought he could destroy Jasmine Crockett by mocking her marriage. Seconds later, she dropped $1 billion truth that tore through the Trump empire like dynamite. The crowd gasped, reporters froze, and the room exploded in chaos. What shocking truth did she drop that broke Barron on live TV? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The hearing room of the U.S. Congress blazed with white lights, every camera locked on. Every seat was filled. Reporters, aides, lawmakers, faces tense, air heavy like before a storm. At the center sat Jasmine Crockett, calm but fierce, eyes sharp as glass. Across from her, Barron Trump leaned back, confidence dripping like oil. He wasn't there for truth. He was there to provoke. His smirk widened under the cameras. "You call yourself a defender of justice," he sneered, "but if you can't keep a family together, how could you ever keep a country together?" A gasp swept the room. Flashbulbs popped. Jasmine didn't move, didn't blink. Her silence became the loudest sound in the chamber, the kind that makes even the powerful feel small, and the cameras hungry for blood. The tension cracked like thunder after Barron's smirk hit the air. He leaned back in his chair, slow and deliberate, the kind of motion that screams power. Cameras zoomed in on his face, catching that half smile, the smug grin of someone who thought he'd already won. "They call you the warrior of justice," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut through the silence. "But all I see is a woman no one wanted to stay with." The words dropped like bullets. The audience gasped, a ripple of shock spreading across the chamber. Even the sound engineers froze, unsure whether to mute or magnify what just happened. The camera swung toward Jasmine Crockett. Her face didn't flinch. Her eyes locked straight ahead, cold and steady, the kind of stare that could freeze fire. 3 full seconds passed, no words, no movement. Just that silence, thick, suffocating, louder than a scream. The tension was so sharp you could almost hear hearts pounding through microphones. Barron smiled wider, mistaking her silence for defeat. But the producers knew better. They kept the camera on her, waiting because silence like that always meant a storm was coming. Barron couldn't resist pressing harder. He leaned in, voice dripping with venom. "You remind me of Hillary Clinton after the Lewinsky scandal," he said, smiling as if he'd delivered a punchline. "When women fail at marriage, they run to politics to fill the void." The crowd stirred like boiling water. Whispers spread from bench to bench. Some lawmakers frowned, others looked away, ashamed but afraid to intervene. Every face the cameras caught told a story: shock, discomfort, disgust. The director cut rapidly between reactions, amplifying the chaos for the millions watching at home. Jasmine finally moved. She stood, calm but deadly, her every motion calculated. The chair creaked under her as if protesting the weight of what was about to come. When she spoke, her voice was low, measured, but filled with the kind of power that didn't need to shout. "You want to turn love into a political scorecard?" she said. The line cut through the noise like a blade. The murmurs stopped. Even Barron blinked, caught off guard by how steady she sounded. Reporters froze mid-type, realizing they were watching history write itself live. Without breaking eye contact, Jasmine reached for a folder marked in red. The papers inside glowed under the light. She lifted it high for the cameras. Pew Research Report 2021. Her tone hardened. 45% of members of Congress have been divorced or are single, she read, voice echoing through the microphones. They still serve this nation with honor. "So tell me, Mr. Trump, are you insulting nearly half of Congress right now?" The room exploded, not in noise, but in energy. The sound of hands tapping desks echoed like applause trying to stay polite. The balance of power shifted, and everyone knew it. The room trembled in silence after Jasmine's words struck like a hammer. Barron forced a laugh, short and sharp, but the cameras caught what his pride couldn't hide: a thin line of sweat glistening down his temple. His smirk stayed, but his eyes flickered, restless under the lights. The chair's gavel slammed once. "Order!" the presiding officer demanded. The lights adjusted automatically, washing the room in a stark contrast. Barron glowing under harsh white, Jasmine calm beneath a softer hue. It looked less like a hearing now, more like judgment. Jasmine didn't rush. She let the silence breathe, then spoke, her tone low and steady. "My mother raised 3 children alone after the war," she said. "No wedding ring, no title. But she taught me what justice really means." Her words fell slow, deliberate, like stones dropped into deep water. The chamber went utterly still. Every eye was on her, every breath held. The camera zoomed in on her face, calm, glowing, unshaken. Then it moved across the dais, capturing lawmakers with trembling hands. Others blinking back emotion they didn't expect to feel on live television. For a heartbeat, it felt like time had stopped. Then Barron tried to shatter it. "Touching story," he sneered, voice cracking just slightly. "But it sounds like a cheap Hallmark script." The insult hit the air but died there, empty and bitter. The audience didn't laugh. No one moved. The echo of his words came back to him, harsh and hollow through the speakers. The tension was unbearable now, like a wire pulled too tight, one more word from snapping. Everyone watching, inside the room, across the nation, could sense it. The storm wasn't over. It was just taking a breath before the next strike. The tension snapped. Jasmine stepped forward, the echo of her heels cutting through the silence like gunfire. Every camera followed her as she reached the witness table. Then, boom! She slammed a thick folder down. The microphones rattled, the sound bursting through the speakers. Heads jerked up. Even the gavel froze midair. The sudden noise was so sharp it felt like the entire chamber had jumped. On the big screen behind her, the first page appeared in bold black letters. "Rupert Murdoch Divorce Settlement, 2022, valued at $1.7 billion. Gasps erupted across the room. Jasmine didn't flinch. She pointed straight into the nearest camera, her voice steady but cutting like steel. "The most powerful media mogul in the world has been divorced 4 times, she said. Did his empire collapse? No, so tell me, does marriage really define leadership?" Her tone hit like a gavel itself, each word clean, measured, impossible to twist. Then she added sharper still, "After every divorce, Rupert Murdoch didn't weaken. He expanded. His network grew. His reach widened. His influence only got stronger." The chamber shifted again. This wasn't just a defense. It was a challenge to the very myth Barron was trying to sell. The camera found Barron Trump again. The lens zoomed close on his face, catching the nervous flicker in his eyes. His jaw tightened. His lips moved, but no sound came for a moment. Then he snapped, louder than he meant to. "This is about morality, not money." The words bounced around the room, desperate and shaky. The crowd stirred again, unsure whether to gasp or laugh. Jasmine turned toward him slowly, almost pitying, and raised a single eyebrow. Her calmness burned hotter than any outburst. She leaned in, voice dropping but still piercing every mic in the room. "You dare talk about morality," she said, "when your father's been divorced twice?" The silence that followed was explosive. The air thickened, cameras shifted in rapid cuts. Lawmakers exchanging glances, one covering his mouth to stifle a laugh, another shaking her head in disbelief. Even the court stenographer paused for half a second before typing again. The moment was electric, raw, humiliating, historic. Barron's face went pale. His fingers tapped the table in rapid, nervous bursts, the telltale rhythm of someone losing control. The sound echoed softly in his microphone, every tap magnified, each one louder than the last. Sweat beaded again on his forehead, visible under the relentless lights. For a man built on the myth of power, it was the first crack in his armor. Jasmine stood still, unbothered, letting his silence fill the space he once dominated. The chamber still vibrated from Jasmine's last hit when Barron leaned toward the mic, hungry to take back the room. He was breathing hard, shoulders rising and falling, the smile on his face stretched thin. Then he let the mask drop and snapped, "My family is different. We rise above those standards." Cameras panned to the benches as the words hit the room like broken glass, lenses lingering on clenched jaws and pursed lips. Several lawmakers frowned. A few shook their heads in open disbelief. A restless hum rolled through the gallery like a warning siren. Jasmine said nothing, not a word, not a flinch. She kept her gaze steady and let him talk himself into the pit he dug. her silence drawing the room tighter like a closing net. The main camera pushed in on Barron's hands, trembling, tapping the pen, clicking it over and over, each click louder than the gavel. His breathing turned rough again, and sweat caught the lights like tiny sparks, his attempted smile wobbling at the edges. The air thickened, heavy as a locked vault, the stenographer slowing. Across the nation, viewers leaned forward, waiting for the hammer to fall and for silence to break. The silence was suffocating when Jasmine slowly lifted her chin and gave a single nod to the technician. The room dimmed for a heartbeat, then the massive screen behind her flickered to life. The sound of static broke through the tension, and a familiar voice echoed through the chamber. Younger, louder, certain of its own arrogance. It was Barron Trump, in an interview from Palm Beach, Florida 2020, seated in front of a golden backdrop, smirking into a Fox Business camera. His words rolled across the speakers like thunder. If Donald Trump can't keep his marriage together, how can he keep America together? The moment the line hit, the chamber exploded. Gasps, murmurs, even laughter crashed together like a storm. The cameras cut fast. One congressman buried his face in his hands. Another couldn't help but laugh out loud, while a woman in the audience looked stunned, mouthing, "He said that?" The sound engineers didn't lower the volume. They let it echo, feeding the chaos. Reporters scrambled to type. Phones shot into the air, and millions watching live felt the same electric jolt. Barron's face drained of color. He pushed back from the desk, eyes wide, veins tense. For a moment, he looked less like the heir to power and more like a man watching his empire catch fire. Then came the eruption. He lunged toward the mic, voice breaking, desperate to regain control. "Fake news, turn that off. I never said that," he shouted, but his tone cracked halfway through, hoarse and trembling. The microphones caught every waver. The technicians didn't move. The screen kept looping the clip, his voice repeating, "If a man can't keep his marriage together," over and over, each replay a punch to his pride. The audience's reactions grew louder. A few laughed, others whispered, but no one looked away. Jasmine stepped forward into the spotlight, her calm cutting through the noise like a blade through fog. Her heels clicked once, twice before she reached the microphone. The chaos around her faded, as if the entire room had been pulled into her gravity. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her voice came low, even, cold as steel. "Marriage," she said, eyes fixed on Barron, "is not a political weapon. And if you turn it into a joke—" She paused just long enough for the silence to tighten again. "That joke will swallow you whole." The sentence landed like a verdict. Every camera froze on her face. Barron's hands clenched the edge of the desk. His knuckles turned white. His breathing grew uneven, chest rising too fast. The air thickened with the weight of humiliation. Reporters whispered, trying to capture every word before it vanished. Across the nation, screens lit up with Jasmine's image. Steady, unflinching, a modern executioner wielding truth instead of power. The chairman didn't bother with the gavel this time. The sound of Jasmine's words was enough. Barron sank slowly back into his seat, eyes glassy, jaw trembling. The room had turned against him completely. The clip still glowed behind him, his own voice haunting him like a ghost. And as the light steadied, it was clear to everyone watching. Barron Trump had just been undone. Not by scandal, but by his own past. The sound of Barron's collapse was almost physical. A dull thud as he dropped back into his chair, shoulders caving, head low. Sweat streamed down his temples, glistening under the harsh congressional lights. His eyes, once sharp and defiant, now burned red, unfocused, hollow. The cameras zoomed in mercilessly, broadcasting every crack, every tremor. His lips parted as if to speak, but what came out wasn't speech, just a broken rasp, a sound more human than powerful, stripped of every ounce of privilege. The audience could feel the fall. The man who had mocked strength now sat in the ruins of his own arrogance. Jasmine took a slow step forward, the echo of her heels cutting through the silence like a heartbeat. The light followed her, bright and unforgiving, drawing every eye back to her calm figure. She didn't look at Barron. She looked past him, at the committee, the cameras, the millions watching. Her voice was steady, low, and commanding, the kind that didn't need to rise to be heard. "People don't need to know whether I have a husband or not," she said, every word clean as glass. "They need to know I can hold the line of justice for them." The sentence hit with the force of truth. Simple, pure, final. Even the air seemed to pause to make room for it. The chairman, visibly moved but professional, raised the gavel. A single strike echoed through the chamber. Bam! "This hearing is adjourned." The sound reverberated like the closing of a door, one era ending as another began. The cameras turned back to Barron. He didn't stand right away. He sat there for a moment longer, staring at nothing, hands limp at his sides. Then slowly he rose, the weight of humiliation dragging every movement. His head bowed, steps heavy, his once proud silhouette shrinking with each pace. The camera followed his retreat in slow motion. His shadow stretched under the pale white light, swallowed by the glow at the edge of the chamber. The powerful image of defeat. A man leaving behind not just the room, but the illusion of superiority. Then something shifted. A lone clap broke the silence. One female lawmaker stood, palms meeting once, twice, defiantly. All heads turned toward her, and then, like a wave breaking, the entire chamber rose. Applause erupted, raw and thunderous, echoing against marble walls. It wasn't polite, it was cathartic, a release of everything the audience had held in. The cameras caught Jasmine at the center of it all. She didn't move, didn't smile. She simply stood there, still and strong, framed in the white glow of the overhead lights. The microphones caught the faint hum of the room, a mix of admiration, relief, and awe. The light hit her face just right, tracing the sharp line of resolve across her expression. To millions watching at home, that image froze in time. Jasmine Crockett, standing tall as a symbol of truth unbroken, a woman who turned humiliation into history. The next morning, America woke up to one image. Jasmine Crockett slamming that folder on the desk. The sound of paper hitting wood echoed through every news broadcast, replayed in slow motion again and again. It wasn't just a moment, it was a rupture. The clip spread across every screen, cable networks, morning shows, social media. Within 24 hours, tens of millions had seen it. Anchors called it the slam that shook Washington. Commentators on opposite sides of the aisle agreed on one thing. Jasmine Crockett had turned humiliation into history. The red folder became a national symbol of defiance, of control, of a woman who refused to bow. Major headlines hit newsstands before noon. The Washington Post declared, "Jasmine Crockett shatters Barron Trump with a $1.7 billion divorce file." The New York Times called it a congressional moment for the ages. Even conservative outlets couldn't ignore the impact. Fox News labeled it Crockett's calculated strike, trying to frame it as stage. But their replay looped the clip for 3 straight segments, and every replay only made it stronger. Online, the image spread faster than politics. People shared it not because it was scandalous, but because it was satisfying. A clean, sharp reversal in a world full of empty apologies. That night, late-night talk shows pounced on it. Jimmy Kimmel replayed Barron's stunned expression, deadpanning, "You can inherit money but not composure." The audience howled. Stephen Colbert said, "We've seen hearings, we've seen chaos, but this was poetry in motion." Even Saturday Night Live opened its show with a skit of the hearing, exaggerating the folder slams so much that each impact shook the fake Capitol walls. But the laughter wasn't mean. The country wasn't just mocking Barron. They were releasing something deeper. A long-stifled need to see arrogance crumble and dignity rise. In living rooms and coffee shops, people began talking, not just about politics, but about their own lives. Radio shows opened their phone lines. "I'm divorced," one caller said, "and I've been treated like a failure for years. But seeing her stand there made me feel seen." Another said quietly, "She didn't just defend herself, she defended everyone who's ever been shamed for trying again." It was rare, one congressional hearing turning into a collective confession booth. By evening, America had stopped laughing and started reflecting. News networks pivoted to discussion panels. Sociologists, journalists, and theologians debated why the moment hit so hard. One professor said, Crockett didn't just respond, she reframed the narrative. She reminded people that failure and moral worth aren't the same thing. Another expert added, for decades, women in power have had to play defense on their private lives. Jasmine went on offense, and that changed everything. Clips from those panels went viral too, not because of outrage, but because of recognition. The conversation had moved beyond politics. It had become cultural. By noon the next day, personal stories began to flood the internet. Thousands of men and women, divorced, single, widowed, remarried, wrote about their lives. A mother in Texas posted, I raised 3 kids alone. No ring, no help, just grit. Jasmine's words reminded me I still count. A teacher in Chicago wrote, my divorce almost ruined my career. Watching her made me realize my integrity isn't gone. It's stronger. These weren't hashtags or campaigns. They were raw, human declarations. People weren't seeking sympathy. They were reclaiming pride. The reaction from middle-aged men surprised even pundits. On morning radio, truck drivers, factory workers, veterans, men who usually avoided politics, began calling in. One said, I've been divorced twice, but I never stopped providing for my kids. That's what she meant. It's not about who you keep. It's about what you keep doing. Another added, she said what a lot of us feel. Our mistakes don't erase our worth. For the first time in years, a political moment bridged gender instead of dividing it. Soon, the numbers backed up the emotion. Pew Research reposted its 2021 study. Nearly half, 48%, of American leaders in business and government had been divorced at least once. Analysts pointed out that presidents, governors, and CEOs who had rebuilt their lives after personal loss often led with more empathy and endurance. One anchor summarized it perfectly. Maybe we've been measuring morality by the wrong metric. On screen, they replayed Jasmine's line, people don't need to know whether I have a husband. They need to know I can hold the line of justice for them. Editorials followed. Time magazine printed a full-page cover of Jasmine mid-slam, eyes fierce, folder frozen mid-air, light pouring down. The headline read, Strength Redefined. The subheader said, she didn't defend her marriage. She defended the meaning of leadership. Inside, essays explored how public morality had been distorted for decades, how women were measured by their homes and men by their titles. One writer concluded, in a single gesture, Crockett separated dignity from domesticity. That's a cultural reset. Copies sold out in hours. Meanwhile, Barron's image disintegrated in real time. Late-night shows turned his outburst into a running gag. His face red, his voice cracking, shouting fake news to an empty chamber. But the humor was almost secondary. His downfall became a lesson. Arrogance collapses fastest when it underestimates quiet strength. Even networks once loyal to his name began using phrases like unraveled and self-inflicted. For a man who built his reputation on control, the irony was complete. He lost it in front of the whole world, while the woman he tried to shame became unshakable. The wave of reflection didn't stop there. Across campuses, universities organized roundtables titled Leadership in Private Life, Lessons from the Crockett Hearing. Professors played clips of her speech to illustrate emotional intelligence, ethics, and the power of measured speech. Communication coaches dissected her pauses, the 3 seconds of silence before every statement, the way she used eye contact like a scalpel. They called it the Crockett method. Respond with truth, not temper. Editorial writers echoed the same message in simpler words. No one column read, has the right to weaponize marriage to humiliate another human being. It was reprinted across dozens of outlets. The phrase resonated beyond politics. It entered sermons, counseling sessions, and classrooms. Clergy quoted her. Activists invoked her. Even some of Barron's former supporters admitted, reluctantly, that she had been right. By midweek, what had started as a scandal had transformed into something rare, a shared moral moment. America had turned the mirror inward and liked what it saw. Talk shows stopped asking, did Jasmine go too far? And started asking, why did this strike such a nerve? The answer was simple. Because for once, truth wasn't cruel. It was human. It didn't punish weakness. It reframed it as proof of resilience. And so the story settled, not as gossip, but as guidance. People stopped talking about who won and started talking about what mattered. The conclusion came not from pundits, but from ordinary citizens. A man in Wisconsin said it best during a call-in interview. It's not the ring that makes you honorable. It's the promise you keep after the ring is gone. His words spread quickly, printed in op-eds, quoted on TV, echoed in online posts. That became the takeaway written into the country's conscience. Morality, Jasmine had shown, doesn't shine in diamonds or depend on vows. It exists in the everyday act of keeping faith with others, voters, family, community. And though the hearing had ended days before, the image of that red folder and the woman who wielded it still played in every mind. A reminder that integrity isn't inherited and justice doesn't wear a wedding band. When the lights dimmed in Washington, the echo remained. Not the slam, but the sentence that followed it. That the true measure of leadership isn't in a marriage certificate, but in the courage to stand firm when every eye is watching. In that sense, Jasmine Crockett hadn't just won a debate. She had redefined the moral architecture of public life. And America, for once, was listening. Days later, the echo turned into action. On the House floor, the chamber filled again, not with heat but with resolve, as lawmakers rose to read a single page that felt heavier than any filibuster. The text was plain, almost spare, yet it rang like a bell. Personal family life shall not be used as a political weapon in official proceedings. Members crossed the aisle to co-sponsor it, hawks and doves, veterans of ethics fights and newcomers who'd watched the hearing from the back row and decided they were done with the old game. The vote board lit green in a rush, then steadied, then locked. The gavel struck, and the resolution passed to a standing silence that felt like respect. What followed was not ceremony but enforcement. Committee councils drafted guidance overnight. No weaponizing marriage, divorce, childbearing, or the lack of it in hearings, floor debate, or official communications. Staffers sat through new briefings with examples, scripts, and red lines. What is permissible scrutiny? What is irrelevant cruelty? Chairs received a protocol card. If personal status is used to intimidate or discredit, gavel down and strike from the record. In press galleries, reporters nodded. They had lived with the noise long enough to know the difference. Washington, for once, wrote a rule it intended to keep. The change rippled outward. Universities seized the moment with the speed of a newsroom on deadline, updating syllabi before the week was out. In leadership ethics seminars, professors added a new module titled, "The Crockett Hearing, Dignity as a Guardrail." Students watched the clip, then read the resolution, then argued in circles that slowly became straight lines. A debate prompt sat on the projector. Does private pain inform public courage? And how do leaders protect both? In lecture halls, you could hear breathing when the slam played, in pens when the resolution scrolled. Law schools treated it like case law. Moot courts reenacted the exchange word for word, then paused on the objection that never had to be spoken because the room had already judged. One instructor mapped out the tactic on a whiteboard: silence, fact, principle, restraint, naming it the Crockett method. Business schools folded the lesson into executive communication labs: how to refuse a false frame without becoming the story. Military academies used it in command ethics, pairing it with battlefield decision-making, the courage to hold fire until the shot is clean. In each space, the takeaway was the same. Power is loud, authority is precise. Beyond campuses, something larger stirred. Community centers hosted Tell Your Story nights where people stood at microphones and spoke without apology. Divorced, single, widowed, remarried, about work done, children raised, promises kept. A nurse in Phoenix said she signed more discharge papers than wedding cards and still saved lives. A pastor in Atlanta admitted he'd preached the wrong measure for years and vowed to change it. A single father in Detroit explained that his worth was not a ring, but a routine. Lunches packed, rent paid, a child who slept without fear. The room listened, and no one checked their phones. Abroad, the clip outran translation. Morning shows in London, Johannesburg, and Seoul played the hearing and then the vote. The screen split between the slam and the resolution's text. European anchors called the change a correction of the culture. African commentators praised the clarity, judge leaders by the duties they carry, not the households they inhabit. In Latin America, panelists drew parallels to their own bruising politics and asked if dignity could become a standard, not a slogan. The tone was not triumphant. It was hopeful, like a door opening to a room that had been locked for too long. By week's end, parliaments from Europe to Asia scheduled debates on codes with almost identical language. Draft titles appeared: Family Privacy and Public Office Acts, Dignity and Discourse Bills, Personal Life Non-Weaponization Rules. Some moved quickly, some cautiously, but the argument sounded the same everywhere. If the state cannot police your heart, neither should its microphones. Advocacy groups reoriented campaigns from scandal chasing to standard setting. Even pundits famous for the blood sport of politics adjusted, because the audience had changed and the market follows attention. The international press settled on a phrase and refused to let it go. Foreign correspondents began referring to Jasmine Crockett as the woman who rewrote American political norms. Editorial boards printed that headline in languages Jasmine had never studied, and yet the meaning was unmistakable. Photos showed her in 3 frames: the poised silence, the raised report, the final sentence. Profiles focused not on her biography, but on her boundary lines, what she refused to do, and therefore what she made possible. It is rare to see a standard born on live television, rarer still to watch it take root. The line that sealed it traveled farther than any image. It appeared on school bulletin boards in plain black ink and on the walls of union halls in paint that bled a little in the heat. It was read at town meetings, stitched on banners over city streets, and taped to monitors in green rooms where hosts took a breath before they went live. People repeated it not like a catchphrase but like a compass. Men are not judged by the number of wedding rings, but by the number of times they keep their promises to the people. Listeners nodded, some with pride, some with relief, and a few with the ache of recognition. Back in Washington, the resolution's language began to show up where it mattered most, in the habits of powerful people. A senator stopped mid-question and withdrew a line he would have asked last year. A cabinet nominee smiled at an insinuation and answered with policy, not biography. And the moment passed like a cloud that had learned not to thunder. Even the cynical admitted that the guardrail worked not because it changed hearts, but because it redirected habits. And habits, kept long enough, become culture. Journalists updated their style books with a new distinction. When personal life is relevant to law, proceed. When it is ammunition, decline. Producers recut segment rundowns, replacing rumor blocks with accountability checks. The change felt subtle on any given day, but you could see it if you stepped back. Less gleeful cruelty, more disciplined scrutiny. Ratings did not drop. Respect rose. The audience, it turned out, had room for both. Thank you for watching until this moment and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.